I'm Lucinda Bassett. We created this program, Attacking Anxiety, about 10 years ago, and it has helped more people recover from anxiety disorder, panic disorder, phobias, and even stress and depression than any other source worldwide. This program can change your life by applying the tools that you learn on the audio tapes and now the video series as well. Now, what I suggest you do is you start by listening to your first audio tape, use the workbook, and I cannot stress this enough. If you don't use the workbook, you're not going to get the results you want to see. So work in the book. The book is here to help you evaluate the way that you think and the way that you react and respond, and help you understand where a lot of your anxiety is coming from. This is a very, very valuable tool. You have 16 audio cassettes. It's preferred that you go through one tape a week. And we want you to listen to that tape 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 times a week, whatever feels right for you. I do, though, think you want to listen to it more than once, because the second and third time you're going to hear so much more than you got out of it the first time. As you listen through the audio tape, make some notes, work in your book, and we've also supplied you with some wonderful little cards. Now, these cards are a great tool to take with you when you travel or take with you to work and just kind of remind you of what's in each particular session. What you want to do is listen to your audio tape, work in your workbook, and then put in your video and watch your segment that goes along with the particular audio tape. So this is session 1, and we're here today to talk about what anxiety is and isn't. Now, as you listen to your audio tapes, you might have a lot of questions and concerns. You might feel like, do I really have this problem? Am I really as serious as this? I mean, they're talking about agoraphobia a lot, and is that really me? It doesn't matter. Anxiety is anxiety. And guess what? Everyone has it. I mean, we can talk about statistics like 20 million people suffer with anxiety disorder, about 16 million people suffer with agoraphobia, which, by the way, simply means you avoid doing things because you don't like the body symptoms that you feel, and we'll discuss those in a minute. But did you know 1 out of 3 people actually suffer with anxiety disorder? And it does tend to be more common to women than men. However, a lot of people believe that's because men don't like to admit that they have a problem with fear. And that's what anxiety is. It's worry and it's fear. When you look up the definition of anxiety in Webster's, it says anxiety is a painful uneasiness of mind, and boy is that true, over an anticipated ill. We anticipate something bad's going to happen, often accompanied by body symptoms such as heart palpitations, and that's when your heart pounds so fast you feel like it's just going to pop right out of your chest, or feelings of nausea or diarrhea or upset stomach where you feel like you might be sick or have to find a bathroom. Another symptom would include dizziness or spacey feelings, like you feel like you're just not there. That was a big symptom for me. Or sweaty palms or inner nervousness, or feelings that something awful is going to happen, or a feeling that you just need to run but you don't know why. These are all symptoms of anxiety disorder. And did you know that 85% of the time people go off to their family doctor complaining of migraines or muscle tension or difficulty concentrating or just feelings of uneasiness that they can't really define, and it's anxiety disorder? I would suggest that you go to your doctor and have a physical. Afraid they might find something? Afraid they might not? This is typical, but it puts your mind at ease when you go to the doctor and they take all the tests, and 85 to 90% of the time, they don't find anything. It's anxiety related. The unfortunate thing, though, is they may, in their 5 or 10 minutes with you, give you an antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication and say, this is your solution. If that happens, I urge you to be cautious about medications. Some medications can be very beneficial, and we'll talk about those later on in the program, and we do talk about them on the audio cassette. But the problem with medication is that for too many people don't want to take medication. If you're like me, you don't even want to take medication. You're afraid of medication. You don't want to become dependent on a medication to get through your day or an airplane flight. And that's the problem. Sometimes people do become dependent on these medications. They end up saying, well, as long as I have my benzodiazepine in my pocket, I can get on the plane or I can drive. But the problem is, we are creative people, and it's time we stop looking at people with anxiety as people with a problem who need to be on medication to fix it. That's not true. You're not someone with a problem. You're someone who's chock full of potential. You're creative. You're intelligent. You're sensitive. You're a perfectionist and you're a worrier, but you're very analytical, and you're very, very intuitive person. And these are traits that when they're turned inward, they can make you sick. But when you turn them outward where they belong, they can take you to a whole new level of living. And you can do things you only dreamed of doing. And that's what I've done with my anxiety. Little did I know when I had severe panic disorder and anxiety and agoraphobia, I had it all, that I was creating a roadmap for other people that would show them how they too could overcome their anxiety on their own. You know, I have to tell you, a lot of the reason we're on such a campaign is that we're so frustrated with what the medical community hasn't done. And the pharmaceutical companies are making an effort to help people help themselves with these drugs, but unfortunately, they want you to take these medications because that's how they make their money. We want you to recover. If medication is part of that recovery for you, so be it. But ask your doctor, be informed, know what you're taking, know what the side effects are, and know what it's going to do to you and for you. Unfortunately, some of the benzodiazepines out there can take away your creative edge. Some of the antidepressants can take away your sex drive. And there's a host of other symptoms and side effects that these medications can cause or create. So just be well informed. You don't ever want to go off your medication without consulting your doctor or without your doctor's assistance. But the goal in this program is for you to get off of, at least cut down on, but eventually get off of your anti-anxiety medication and possibly and probably your antidepressants. This program is not just for people with panic disorder or agoraphobia. Everyone would benefit from the skills in the Attacking Anxiety program because they teach you how to be more in control of your emotions, more in control of the way you think, more in control of your life. And couldn't we all use that? This program, Attacking Anxiety, is going to make you a better mother, a better father, a better spouse, a better employee, a better anything. You may find that you think this program is a little repetitive, or it's overwhelming, or there's too much information. That's all normal, but don't quit, because I guarantee you the results you see when you finish this program are going to amaze and astound you, and probably the people in your life as well. You're about to go from someone who may be angry a little too often, or a little bit of a negative thinker, or someone who worries all the time about their health or their state of mind, to someone who's in control, assertive, who feels good about their self and in control of their emotions. Since I've overcome my anxiety and my panic disorder, I cannot tell you how many of my dreams have come true. This is the beginning of a whole new way of life for you. I'm excited, so let's get started. Hi, and welcome back. Now this is session 2, 6 steps to putting an end to panic attacks. Now if you're someone who's in the program and you really don't think you've ever had panic attacks, that's okay. You want to listen to this tape and watch this segment anyway. Because you know what I think? I think we've all had panic attacks at one time or another in our lives, even those of us who don't have anxiety disorder. One of the questions I get asked most often about panic attacks by some of the show personalities, the show hosts and shows that I've been on, what does a panic attack feel like, Lucinda? Well, you know, the only way I can describe a panic attack is if you're in an airplane and you know the plane is going to crash and it's going nose down and you got 5 minutes to think about it. Your heart's going do-do-do-do-do, and you're hyperventilating and you're thinking about your life is just kind of passing before you and you are anticipating death. That's what a panic attack feels like, except guess what? You feel that way when you're sitting in your living room watching television, or when you're sitting out on the highway in a traffic jam, or when you're up on the airplane on a beautiful flight with no turbulence. So how can we define a panic attack? It's this overwhelming sensation that you need to get out and that something bad is going to happen, even though you might not even be able to put your finger on it, and you need to run somewhere to a safe place or a safe person because you want those feelings to stop. That's a panic attack. Your heart starts to pound like it's going to pound right through your chest, and you feel like you just can't catch your breath, and you get kind of sweaty and your hands get sweaty and you just feel terror on the inside. That's a panic attack. You know, one thing that's very helpful that you might want to do is rate your panic, the feelings. In other words, 1 being, I'm not panicky at all, to 5 being, boy, I feel really kind of nervous and agitated on the inside, to 10 being, I'm going to explode and I need to get out of here. And then when you rate it, it kind of gives you a perspective on how bad it is and what you need to do to take care of it. And you know what you need to do when you're in the throngs of a panic attack? Nothing. The last thing you need to do is run. And I know that's really scary. And if you're someone who's having panic attacks on a daily basis, which, by the way, is what happened to me, I'll never forget my first panic attack. I was up in my bedroom at my parents' house, and I was sitting there, and I'd come home from college, and I had broken up with my boyfriend, and I was all stressed out. You know, I didn't know what the symptoms of stress were, but I was laying in bed, and all of a sudden, I sat up in bed, and my heart started to pound, and I couldn't breathe, and all these scary thoughts ran through my mind, and things that had happened to me as a child that I never told anybody, you know, guilt feelings and fears and concerns. And I ran downstairs, and I remember the wallpaper seemed really funny, and my mom and dad were arguing, and I said, "Something's wrong with me. You have to take me to the emergency room. I'm losing my mind." And I remember my mother, not knowing any better, she said, "Well, stop thinking that way. If you think you're crazy, you'll go crazy." Well, that was it. That scared me. I thought, that's it. I'm going to go crazy. And every article I read over the next 6 months was about schizophrenia or, you know, paranoia. And I thought, that's it. That's what's wrong with me. I mean, I thought they were going to lock me away and throw away the key. And now I can laugh about it. But panic attacks aren't funny. They're very, very frightening. And you always feel like you need to run somewhere. Well, you've got to stop running. If you don't stop running, you won't recover. And this is a great time to stop running, because you know what? You got a parachute right here. You've got something that's going to help you get through this. So let's take a look at what creates a panic attack. No, it's not your husband, and it's not your job, and it's not your children, and it's not the airplane, and it's not the grocery store, and it's not the traffic jam. It's you. It's how you fear the responses that your anxiety creates when you're standing in line at the bank, or you're in the traffic jam. When you're in a situation where you feel you can't get away, when you want to get away, that's when you panic, isn't it? If you go out to dinner with friends and you're sitting in the back seat, or you have to get up to give a presentation, what if? That's when the what ifs start. What if I forget my lines? What if I forget my words? What if I get on the highway and I lose control of my car? And then you panic. Would you like to know why you panic when you start what-ifing? Because you have created the adrenaline response, and it's coursing through your body. You've scared yourself. You've set yourself up. Do you know how many people set themselves up for panic before they even get on the plane? Would you like to hear a cute story? Well, I was asked to give a presentation in Los Angeles, and I was living in Ohio. Now, here's a beautiful example of setting yourself up for a panic attack. And I got on the plane, and I hadn't flown it for about 4 years, and I was really kind of anticipating, and by the way, we'll get into anticipatory anxiety a little later on. I was anticipating this flight, but I got on, and everything was great, and we were cruising along, and about an hour and a half into the flight, we were approaching 2 hours into the flight, we were approaching Denver, and the pilot, who hadn't spoken at all, comes on and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, about this time of year, we find that the winds over the Rockies come out of the east, and they bump up with the winds out of the west, and it creates moderate to severe turbulence. Now, we'd like to ask the flight attendants to please be seated. And by the way," then he said the clincher that really got me, "we'll be approaching that turbulent area in approximately 17 minutes. Oh, that was it. I sat there, I remember I was like this. I gripped the arms of the chair, and I was hyperventilating, and I was looking at my watch like this, and all the flight attendants sat down, and I'm looking around the plane, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to hit a turbulent area in 17 minutes. What am I going to do? And I'm sitting there, and I looked at my watch, and 10 minutes into the flight, and by now I was a mess, all right? The sweat was pouring down my forehead. I was breaking. I couldn't breathe. My hands were sweaty. I was hyperventilating, and I'm looking at my watch, and we're 15 minutes into the flight, and I'm looking at my watch, and it's like 16 minutes, and I'm like, oh, and my knees were like trembling. Your knees ever do that? I mean, my knees were just trembling. I was a mess. I was a wreck. I mean, we could have been crashing, and I couldn't have been more upset. I was in a full-blown 15-level panic attack. And all of a sudden, I look around, and the flight attendants are up, and they're walking around, and they're serving drinks. And I grabbed the guy by the arm, and I said, "Excuse me, when are we going to hit that turbulent area?" And he went, "Oh, we passed over that 10 minutes ago. There wasn't any turbulence." The joke was on me. How many times have you done this to yourself? How many times have you just created the most immense panic because you were anticipating something awful happening that never even happened? Getting back to what do we do when we panic? Number one, this is a 6-step process to eliminating panic attacks. So what you want to do is go to your trusty little workbook, and it's very, very clear. The first thing you want to do is accept it. Don't run from it. Let's say you're in a traffic jam, or you're in a mall, or you're up giving a presentation. Give yourself permission to be anxious. It's okay. How long has it been since you've flown? How long has it been since you've given a presentation? And you know, for me, speaking of presentations, what I used to do when I first started out is I would give myself several places where I could end the presentation, or I'd put in a couple of little tests that people could take. So if I needed to take a break and go to the restroom or something, I could do that. So what you want to do is set yourself up so that when you do start feeling nervous, you can control that environment. You can leave if you need to leave. All right, recognize that it's a panic attack. Second, try to figure out what is really bothering me. Am I really upset about my interview tomorrow, or am I anticipating my plane flight next week? What's really, really bothering me right now? Third, give yourself permission to feel anxious about whatever it is. Of course I feel anxious. I haven't flown for a long time. And fourth, use positive dialogue to make yourself feel better. I mean, we're going to talk about that the next session, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But if you tell yourself, oh my gosh, if I get on that plane, I'm just going to lose control, you're setting yourself up for a bad plane flight. But if you say, hey, I haven't flown in 3 years, of course I'm anxious and it's okay, but I'm going to enjoy this flight. Which one automatically makes you feel better? This is a skill that everyone needs to learn, the power of positive self-talk, and you're going to learn that next session. Fifth, distract yourself. This is so important when you're working through a panic attack. In other words, read magazines, talk to the person in the plane beside you, turn on the radio, pick up a magazine and read if you're sitting in a traffic jam, but distract yourself. Don't run home. If you're in a mall, sit and talk to your spouse or your best friend, but don't leave, don't run. You've been running all your life. It's time to stop running. And sixth, laugh at yourself. See the humor in what you feel. Those spacey feelings won't hurt you. That's just bewilderment. That's your mind's way of taking a mini vacation. It's protecting itself. Don't let it frighten you. Float with it. Float with those spacey feelings, and they'll always go away. Relax. Stay calm, give yourself permission, let time pass, and don't run. Because you know what? The more you get through these panic attacks, they're practice opportunities. They're opportunities for you to use your new skills. Because I want to tell you something. 3 things have to be in place before you can overcome this disorder. Number 1, you have to understand that you are creating your anxiety. You are the cause. Number 2, you have to have coping skills to use when you are working through your panic attacks, and those you're learning in this program. And then number 3, you have to face your fears. That's it for this week. We'll see you on session 3. Hi, and welcome back. This is session 3, and by the way, one of my favorite sessions, self-talk, the key to healthy self-esteem. You know, if I had to pick one thing that I could teach my children that would be one of the most valuable tools they could acquire, it would be this one. When you think about the fact that the average person has 300 negative thoughts a day, that's a pretty compelling thought, isn't it? That means that you literally are beating yourself up every 2.5 minutes. How powerful. No wonder you always feel bad or drained or incapable or not good enough or guilty. The thoughts that you put in your head, food for thought as I call it, is just as important, if not more important, than the food you put in your stomach. Because you are the sum total of your thoughts. And I guarantee you, your anxiety is created by your thoughts. And it's also controlled by your thoughts. And recovery is possible by the thoughts that you give yourself. When you learn the skill of positive self-talk, it's going to make you so much more effective in every area of your life. But what you have to do first is recognize that negative thinking is an addictive, bad habit that you've gotten into. That's right, it's a bad addiction. In other words, you say, well, how can that be? Well, let me tell you something. Anything that you practice over and over and over again, the better you get at it. Whether it's being negative or worrying or being an angry person, the more you practice it, the more you do it, the more second nature it becomes. And you may be looking at this program right now and saying, Oh, you know what? I think I've heard all this before. Or, boy, this is just too long. There's too many tapes. It's too much work. Or, I've had this too long. I'm just telling you, all the negative thoughts, all the negative statements we've heard through the 15 years we've been doing this. I've had this for too long. This isn't going to help me. Or, I've been on every medication in the book and they didn't work. What's different about this? Or, I've tried other programs and they didn't work. How is this going to help me? Well, part of the reason you haven't gotten better is because no one has shown you this negative side. And the interesting thing is, when I was told that I was a negative thinker, I didn't believe it. I thought I was one of the most positive persons that walked the earth. At least I appeared to be positive. But we aren't. We beat ourselves up constantly. We scare ourselves. When we feel a rush of adrenaline, why can't we see it as excitement? Instead, we see it as some awful, bad thing. We're having a heart attack. If we have a pain in our stomach, we've got stomach cancer. If we have a pain up here, we've got breast cancer. If we have a pain up here, we've got a brain tumor. That's how we think. We are worriers. We are negative thinkers. Nothing we do is ever good enough. No one ever lives up to our expectations. And that's what negative thinking is all about. So what you have to do, it's kind of like an alcoholic. You have to recognize that you are addicted to this negative behavior. And then you have to say to yourself, I love myself unconditionally. And I'm a good person, and I want to be happy. So I'm going to recognize that this is part of my negative, addictive behavior, is negative thinking. And I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to be patient with myself, and I'm going to overcome it. Now, something I'd like you to do this week is go out and buy a little spiral pad and track all your negative thoughts. Because it's amazing, when people would come into group and we'd say, all right, list 10 or 15 negative thoughts that you had this week, they could never think of any. So we found that if you carry a little notebook around, and every single time you have a negative thought, pull that little flip notebook out and write it down. I don't care if you're at work or if you're at home or even if you're in bed. Keep it by your bed. Write down that negative thought. I think you'll be amazed at how many negative thoughts the average person has. And we're not average, right? Because we're perfectionistic worriers that are analytical and over-concerned about everything. So write down your negative thoughts. And then you want to leave a space so that you can replace that negative thought with something that feels better. And that's really, really hard for some people to do. It talks about it on the tape, and we tell you how to do it in the workbook. But let me tell you a little bit how I did it. When I started working on thinking positive, this was so hard for me. I didn't grow up in that kind of environment. I grew up in an environment where we communicated with guilt and fear, and we even controlled each other with guilt and fear, and that's very negative. So when I had to start trying to make myself feel better, I didn't have a good role model. I didn't know what to do. So what I did is I thought, you know what? What would I say to my sister? And she, unfortunately, died of cancer 2.5 years ago, but she was somebody that I really, really loved a lot. She was one of my best friends. So when I said to myself, what would I say to her if she said, I didn't do that right, or I'm not good enough, or I look like, dog meat today? What would I say to her to make her feel better? And I started saying it to myself. Or what would I say to my husband? And now, what would I say to my children if they were beating themselves up? Because I am really, really good, and I bet you are too, because you're sensitive, at making other people feel good about themselves. Why couldn't I do it for me? So that's what I started doing. And you know what seems to work for a lot of people? Stop yourself when you're having a negative thought. A red stop sign needs to come up in front of your face and say, I'm doing it again, and I want to stop this. I don't want to be this way anymore. I want to feel better about myself, and I'm the one that has the power. You have the power. So you say to yourself, what would Lucinda tell me to say? How would I replace that thought? How would she replace that thought for me? Be careful not to go to extremes. Like you get up in the morning and you say, boy, I feel really fat and ugly today. And then you say, no, I don't. I look like Raquel Welch and I feel great. You're not going to believe that. So what you say is, hey, I don't feel fat and ugly. I just don't feel very energetic, but I'm going to dress in something really comfortable. I'm going to fix my hair a little differently. I'm going to take a great snack. I'm going to take a great book. I'm even going to take my little cards, and I'm going to make myself have a good day because I want to have a good day. You know, when you get in your car in the morning and you say, it's a cloudy day, I don't feel good, I don't want to go to work today, I feel fat, I don't like so-and-so at work, I wish I didn't even have that job, there's 6 negative thoughts. How long is it going to take you to get to 300? Not very long. It's up to you. You need to make a conscious decision right now that you don't want to live this way anymore because life is too much fun, because it is. And it's not about one of the things I always tell people, it's not about somebody else making you happy. If you're in a relationship that you feel isn't really good, or you're in a job situation that you don't feel really good about, or there's something going on in your life that you feel it just isn't making you happy, you know what my suggestion is? Don't do anything about it right now. You're too green. Wait until you get through this program before you make any major decisions, because you don't want to make any decisions based on improper information. In other words, you're blaming somebody else for the fact that your life isn't working, or you really think you're not happy because of something someone else is doing, or you don't want to ever make a decision based in fear. So wait till you get through the program and you get some of these skills down, and one of the most important skills you need to work on this week is positive dialoguing. You know another thing about positive dialoguing? It's addictive. It's really addictive. And why not become addicted to the good stuff? Your body doesn't know the difference. I mean, the good stuff feels the same as the bad stuff, only it feels better. So let your body become addicted to doing things that feel good. I remember my husband David came downstairs one time, and he was all kind of, shuffled. His hair was kind of messy. He had a holy t-shirt on. He was going for a bike ride. And I remember looking at him and thinking, boy, he really looks kind of cute and sexy right now. But I didn't tell him. Why didn't I tell him? You have the power to make your kids and your husband and your coworkers and your employees and employers and everybody feel better with just a simple statement like, boy, you really look great today, or wow, I really like your hair, or is that a new dress? It's beautiful. Or you know what? You just really made me feel good when you did that for me. Thank you. Start complimenting people every chance you get. Start today. And especially yourself. Start writing affirmations about how good you are and how attractive you are and how smart you are, how creative you are, how good you feel, and how good of a parent you are. You're a good mom, you're a good dad, you're a good spouse, how lucky people are to be in your life. And tack them around on your mirror, tack them in your car. Read some things about yourself that make you feel good. I'm a strong person, I'm a confident person, I'm a good person, I shine, I feel good. People enjoy my company. I enjoy my company. And you know what that's going to do for you? You're going to get more and more comfortable with being by yourself, because that's something people like us were never very good at either, being alone. Because if the truth be known, we spent that time alone being negative and beating ourselves up. This session is so important. If you don't grasp it right away, go back and listen to this tape again. I guarantee you'll hear some very important information the second time around. And it's extremely important that you continue dialoguing your negative thoughts throughout the rest of this program, because this is one skill you really want to grasp. And once you get it, you can teach it to your children and your mother, and maybe even your mother-in-law and your husband and your best friend. See you next time. Hi, and welcome back. This is session 4. Expectations. Expect less and get more. That sounds pretty impossible, doesn't it? One thing about our personality type is we are constantly and consistently setting ourselves up for disappointment. From other people, from our families, from ourselves, especially ourselves. We beat ourselves up and we never live up to our own expectations. This is an extremely important session because we are people pleasers. Now you may say, no, I don't think I am, but I'm telling you, you're the kind of person that wants everybody to like you. You want everybody to think you're always in control. You want to always appear to be in control. That's the operative word, control here. You want to, even if you're not in control, you have to appear to be in control at all times. And it's so important to us, especially if you're a parent, or you're married and you have children. You want your children to always appear in control. You want your husband to always seem happy, because when everything in your little world looks good, then you look good. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter, because no matter what you do, you can't please everybody. And no matter what you do, not everyone's going to like you. There's a little saying that says, 60% of the people aren't going to like you no matter what you do, because maybe they don't like the size of your lips, or maybe they don't like the fact that you drive a hot rod, or maybe they don't like the fact that you eat spaghetti. Who knows? And another 40%, they're an open book, and they're my favorite, by the way. They don't care who you are. They want you to tell them who you are. So you know what? You shouldn't have to try so hard. I remember when I went to my one of my class reunions, and I think it was my 15th reunion, and the girl that everybody voted most popular and most likely to succeed. And she came to this reunion, and let me tell you, did she look great. She stood there in this thin little black linen dress and this perfect hat, and she just looked so perfect. And guess what happened? No one talked to her the whole time. You know, we were all drinking beer and carrying on and getting rowdy and having fun. Oh, look, there's Susie, and oh, there's Mary, and getting crazy and having a fun time. And she just kind of stood back in the corner looking like, don't mess my hair, don't mess with my hat, don't mess with me. So nobody messed with her. You think about the friends that you have in your life. Don't you really like the people that kind of come in and make themselves at home and snort and tell jokes and laugh? And the real people, that's what it's about. It's about not trying so hard. This session is so important. You have to ask yourself, why am I trying so hard to please these people? And have you ever done this one? Have you ever tried really hard to please someone you didn't even like? I spent the better part of my adult life trying to please my father, and I really loved my father, and he's passed away and has been gone for about 7 or 8 years. But at the time, he was an alcoholic, and he had a very bad temper, and there were things about him that embarrassed me and that I didn't like. And yet, I spent the better part of my life, as did my brothers and sisters, really just wanting to hear him say he was proud of me and wanting to hear him say that he loved me. And he never really could do that because of where he had come from in his life. And I grew up and really forgave him and stopped blaming him. And as a result of learning these skills, most important thing I did is I stopped trying to please him. Now it's so much better because now I can go to a social event, and I used to feel like I had to be the life of the party. I had to be, you know, Miss entertainer. I had to be the one everybody wanted to talk to and the one everybody wanted to be with, and I always had to be funny and entertaining. And now I don't try that hard anymore. Sometimes it's okay just to go to a party and sit there and watch other people. And when you stop trying so hard to be liked and to be perfect, it's amazing what a relief, what freedom it is. And then you find out who your real friends are. And your real friends are the people that know all sides of you. Don't you feel better anyway when someone shows you their vulnerable side? I know I do. I don't trust anybody that always seems to be perfect and totally together and totally happy. That's not the real world. And that's another thing. What are your expectations? You know, if we would have gone into marriage and families with someone telling us marriage isn't easy and children aren't easy, they're wonderful and the payoff is great, but it's not even always wonderful. Sometimes it's a lot of work, and sometimes you feel like you're not doing any of it right and no one's getting enough attention, and that's okay because that's real life. Instead of striving for perfection, strive to live with imperfection. Strive to be able to be comfortable with the fact that things aren't perfect and never will be. Here, let me ask you a question. What's really sensitive and has a lot of buttons that can be pushed? You. That's right. And the more you let people push your buttons and they get the reaction they've always wanted, the more often they're going to push those buttons. You're someone who's easily manipulated. You're easily controlled. You're easily made to feel guilty. And we're going to touch on that in another session. There are things you can do about it right now. And one of the things you can do right now is start lowering your expectations. But doesn't that mean I won't have any goals? No, reach for the stars. You want to have goals. You want to have dreams. I do seminars for major corporations like Chrysler and AT&T and McDonald's and Merck Pharmaceuticals. And one of the things I used to do is I would say, if I had a magic wand and I could make your dream come true and you could have or do or be anything you wanted to do or be, what would it be? And you know what the saddest thing was? So many of those people didn't have a dream. What happened to their dream? Some of these people are in their 40s or 50s or whatever, and they weren't dreaming anymore. It's like they'd settled into this comfort zone and they say to themselves, hey, this is it. You know, I've got my house, I've got my family, I pay my mortgage, I'll retire in 15 years. That's life. But wait a minute, I thought you always wanted to go to law school. I thought you wanted a little cabin on a lake in Colorado. I thought you wanted to own your own golf course. I thought you wanted to be an artist. I thought you wanted to go back to school and be a nurse. I thought what happened to those dreams? I thought you wanted to write a book. Don't ever stop dreaming. As a matter of fact, you might want to take out a piece of paper and say, what 3 things would I want right now if I could make them come true? What would I really want for myself? What are my dreams? What did I let go of? What would my dreams be? Turn your expectations into attainable goals. Start dreaming again, and then start using your worry time as plan of action time to make those dreams come true. Lower your expectations about other people, because you know what? No matter what you do, no one's ever going to live up to your expectations. Not your husband, not your boss, no one. That's real life. If you're healthy and you've got a really nice support system and you're basically, together up here and you've got your physical well-being about you, then you don't have anything to complain about. You know what I used to say? I used to say, give me my mental health and my physical health, God, and I'll make everything else happen. That's all I can ask for. And now I've included that, of course, to my children and my husband, and just recently my mother had a stroke and she's healthy. They say it's a miracle. So I'm very lucky. So what do I have to complain about? Look at yourself. Look at your expectations. What are you expecting from your 10-year-old or your 3-year-old? Is it realistic? Are you expecting a 5-year-old to communicate with you at 29? Forget it. It's not going to happen. Are you expecting your husband, who thinks and talks and acts completely different than you because he's a man and you're a woman? If you're expecting him to understand what you're feeling, forget it. You have to talk more and communicate better. So what are your expectations? Lowering your expectations and turning them into attainable goals and learning to be a better communicator will help with your anxiety levels immensely, because those ridiculous expectations create a lot of your anxiety. When the holidays don't live up to your expectations, or your husband didn't follow through on Mother's Day, or your children think, you're a bad mother because you weren't at the play because you had to work, and you spend all day beating yourself with a baseball bat. And that's what we're getting to here, folks. You have to take control. And it's controlling emotions and controlling things like ridiculous expectations that you or no one else could ever live up to. See you next week. Hi, and welcome back. This is session 5, Diet, Nutrition, and Exercise, or Eat and exercise to rid yourself of anxiety, and boy, is that a true statement. Right about now, you should be feeling a little bit better, because you know you're not losing your mind, you know you're not dying, you know you're not the only one with this problem, and you know it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. Also, you should be listening to your relaxation tape every day, so you should be getting comfortable with relaxation, comfortable with doing nothing. And that's not easy for us, because I remember a time for me when I had anxiety disorder. I didn't see how people could even garden or paint or read a book. I had to be always doing something productive. I always had to be busy. I always had to know that there was an end means to what I was doing. There was a reason for what I did. And I don't do that anymore. I am so good at sitting around and doing nothing. It's almost funny. I love time to myself. I cherish that time, and it's so important. As a matter of fact, you know what I do now? I live by water, and I take a walk by the water every morning, and I sit by the bank of the water, and I just thank God for everything I have. I start out my day gratefully. I thank them for my health and my children's health and my marriage and all the wonderful things I've been grateful enough to have in my life. And then I ask for him to please give me the patience to stay calm and to be a good mother and to be patient about the things that I want to happen in my life, and to keep me on the right side of the force and doing things that I'm doing for the right reasons, and to keep me focused and to keep me just, in a good place in my life. That's how I start my day every day, and it seems to work for me. You might want to try it. This particular session is so important. We're talking about diet and exercise and nutrition here. And by the way, I think you're starting to recognize and realize that on these videos are not the program. It's a whole separate thing. If you don't listen to the audio tapes, you're missing it, folks, because that's the good stuff. These videos are just to help give you a push or a boost, to give you something a little more personalized that goes along with each session. But I'm not going to really go over the same information on these videos, because I don't want to just repeat myself. So we're not going to get into all the nutrition that you're going to learn about on the tapes and in the workbook. I'm going to talk more about why it's so important. I want to give you a wonderful example. Lately, Ritalin is getting so much attention as a drug for attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity in children. And so many people are just doling this stuff out to their kids. And I'm sure there are some kids who actually are attention deficit disorder who really benefit from the drug Ritalin, and Ritalin can be an effective drug for some. But I have to tell you what happened with my own child. I have a 4-year-old little boy, and we all joke about being type A personalities. Anyone that's ever met David will tell you he's a very high energy guy, my husband, and I have a lot of energy, as I'm sure you've noticed. And so we bore these children that are type A personalities. Brittany's 10 years old, and she's beautiful, and she's smart, and she's the neatest little girl. And Sammy's 4 years old, and he's cute, and he's lovable and so affectionate. You won't find a more loving little boy. But I'll tell you what, there are times at 4 years old when he's running around this room and bouncing off the walls, and he was going through these episodes where he'd almost turn into a little monster, where he'd be like growling and saying things he didn't mean, and we were just kind of at our wits' end. I would look at him and I'd say, why is he acting this way? He comes from a wonderful environment. He's got a daddy and a healthy mommy and a great sister and a beautiful home. And, you know, why is he acting this way? And so we finally figured it out on our own. We really started seeing a major connection between him reacting this way and his glass of orange juice in the morning, or that powdered donut that he wanted at the deli when we were at the grocery store, or the pack of those little fruit chews that they, sell at the grocery stores that they say they're all fruit. Well, anything with sugar in it affected Sammy. And so we did an experiment. We took him completely off sugar for a week. Now, someone might say, boy, that sounds hard. Well, it was hard, because you don't think about it. We went to a luau, and everyone was drinking punch, and I had to tell Sammy he couldn't have any. But you know what we did? We did some really creative things. We replaced his juice with sparkling water and lemon, and he loves it. And we packed his lunch with no sugar in it whatsoever. Now, he still eats a certain amount of things, but when we took him away from the sugar, it changed his personality completely. I have to wonder how many of those parents who put their kids on Ritalin would find that the kid didn't need it if they just took him off sugar completely. So let's take a look at you. Are you someone who's eating a lot of white sugar? Do you eat candy bars? Do you drink orange juice? Do you eat a lot of fruit? Do you put sugar in your coffee? Oh my gosh, double whammy. Are you drinking caffeine? Are you having a cup of coffee in the morning and maybe one in the afternoon, or maybe you get the 3 o'clock doldrums and so you have a cappuccino? And don't get me wrong, I love sugar and I love coffee, but you have to understand that when you're on session 5 of this program and you're having panic disorder, coffee and sugar are a major no-no. They will create a panic attack. And if you don't believe me, just go off of it for a week. You're going to feel worse. You're going to feel drained. You're going to have headaches. And after a week, have a half cup of caffeine. That actually creates an adrenaline response in your body and will create panicky feelings. So if you're someone who suffers with anxiety disorder, what should you be doing? Well, number one, you should be avoiding caffeine or cutting back on it, avoiding chocolate, avoiding sugar, and believe it or not, even salt is a stimulant. So watch your intake of salt. The other thing you have to do, and I cannot stress this enough, I walk 4 miles a day whether I want to or not. You have to do it. Not for how you physically look. That's secondary, believe it or not. The real gain is in what it does for you emotionally. Because what it does is, remember we talked about the catecholamine surging through your body. You have an excessive amount of catecholamine. That helps to delete that catecholamine, and it increases your endorphin activity. And actually, it will alleviate the anxious symptoms and create symptoms of relaxation. The best thing you can do in the morning is get up and go for a walk. Try it. Start tomorrow. Get off the caffeine and start walking. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want the freedom of panic disorder? How bad do you want to get control of your life? How bad do you really want to feel good? Because I guarantee you, if you start eating differently, and it's all in the program, if you start eating healthy foods, you start getting off caffeine, I'm talking about tea and Coke and chocolate and coffee, get off of it. Get it out of your life. Try it for a week. You will not believe how different you feel in 1 week. And start walking. Walk a half mile, walk a mile, walk 3 miles, but get out there and walk. I don't care if it's cold outside. Bundle up, it feels good. Or get on your treadmill. But exercise every day. And it's a great thing to do with your kids, too. And if you start watching your diet and you start watching your children's diet, you won't believe the difference in your kids when you get them away from the junk and the sugar. I'm not saying that you're never going to want to go out and have a chocolate milkshake or an ice cream sundae, because I'm a firm believer in moderation, okay? I don't think you want to just, live on wheat germ for the rest of your life. And speaking of wheat germ, I want to talk a little bit about irritable bowel syndrome. That's something that, somebody's got to talk about it. It might as well be me. I don't know that you can ever totally recover from that. What it is it's It's everything that you eat. Basically, you have an irritable colon and an irritable intestinal tract, and whenever you get upset about anything, it goes to your intestinal tract and it upsets you, and you feel like you're going to have to find a bathroom. And I lived for a long part of my life like that, and I still haven't quite conquered that 100%. Sometimes when I'm really upset, or when I'm traveling, or when I'm in another country and I'm drinking water or something, you know, or even another city, the water in another city can really bother me. There are medications you can take for that. I personally haven't found anything that works that well. What I have found that works is bran. And I'm talking about the stuff that looks like sawdust and tastes like sawdust. But what even works a little better than that is Citracel, because it's not quite as bloating. So you need to experiment. Try Metamucil, try Citracel. And if you really need to depend on a pill, if you're perhaps going down the Grand Canyon on a horse, or you're going on a 3-hour bus tour and there aren't bathrooms available and you really feel like you don't know what to do, Imodium AD, even broken in half. I'm very sensitive. Just break one in half and take half of one, and that can really, really help. So that's something that you might, you know, fall back on if you really need it. But there are things you can do. Caffeine stimulates irritable bowel. Alcohol stimulates irritable bowel. So you might have noticed that when you go out and have a couple glasses of wine, the next morning you have a problem. Or if you drink a cup of coffee, later you have a problem. These are all things. Even fruit stimulates that. So be very, very careful and watch the foods that you eat and the things that you drink if this is one of your problems. If you really want to make it on the road to recovery, start right now. No excuses. I want you to start exercising today, and I want you to start watching your diet today. And if you want to talk about good vitamins, there are some wonderful vitamins out there. You need to go to the health food store and talk to a specialist about vitamins. I have my own opinion on that. I like an overall good multivitamin, and then I also substitute with a couple of other vitamins, some vitamin C and vitamin E and some vitamin Bs. But that's something that you need to do for yourself and on your own. All right, that's it for this particular session. Next week, we're going to be talking about anger. See you then.